Opening scenes of Peru, including a holy man ringing a bell while looking around, a llama eating grass in a field with Machu Picchu mountain in the background, women sitting on the ground dyeing yarn and weaving blankets, and groups of people in traditional clothing and headwear dancing on a street. Words on the screen: Michael McCulloch, Janice Kapang, Bernie Tretta, and Zach Cater-Syker. Juan Carlos Corimania. Editors: Josh Thornton, Xander Komnick, and Robert Harrington. Produced and filmed by Robert Harrington, Bella Media. Executive producer: Michael McCulloch. Over a picture of Michael lying on his stomach, peering over the edge of a steep embankment, the title, "One Step at a Time," in bold white letters scrolls up from the bottom to the top of the screen. The words Cusco, Peru appear over a time-lapse scene of people walking through the streets, followed by aerial views of the city, and finally, a revolving shot of Michael in a navy blue coat and gray Peruvian hat with tassels overlooking the city from a high vantage point. Robert Harrington, video producer.
The first time I met Michael, he seemed strong, determined, and just all around a great guy.
Denise, sister.
We're only 3 years apart, but it always kept us in a different school, mostly, right? So we had different friends, different interests. And so what I do know about Michael, and more vividly, like teen years, is he was in my corner many times, when you're just going through things as teenagers. So he was a great big brother from that aspect. Also, probably a lot of people don't know, he was a pretty avid baseball player. And he played Little League the entire time he grew up, and then he played high school baseball. And, did very well. He was a great third baseman.
Lauren, daughter.
He'd have me on the weekends. He'd take me to do the fun things like amusement parks and movies and the theater. So we always got to try new things with him. When I was a kid, we went to the beach a lot. I knew he had windsurfed when he was younger, and he'd try to teach me, to catch waves and stuff. That was one of my most fond memories of him growing up, was going to the beach and trying to, surf. And I also knew as a kid he was going on ski trips a lot.
Michael skiing.
When I was like 12 or 13, he became passionate about the most important thing, and that was Jesus. And so that was a big deal in his life and in mine.
Picture of Michael with an
Not
adult
until
Lauren.
I was an adult, then we developed a stronger relationship.
Michael
An
McCulloch.
important part of my life is my daughter Lauren and granddaughter River. I especially like spending time with them and going to River's softball and volleyball games.
Him and River, my daughter, they have a good relationship.
Pictures of Michael and River sticking out bright blue colored tongues.
She's 9 now, so she's a little too cool for the silly stuff that he likes to do, but when she was younger, they were daredevils together.
Sandia Rao, friend.
Quiet exterior, but he has a big heart. In 2014, I broke 5 major bones. He called me every day of that long recovery. I even remember him coming to the hospital to feed me soup. Not sure how wise it was to have a blind guy feeding a scalding liquid, but as always, he did it perfectly. And he even made airplane noises to make me smile.
Pastor Michael T.
I first
Dunn.
met Michael by him just coming to Bible study that I was leading and then being a part of the congregation. I've learned that Michael is really passionate about serving the blind community.
That's a big part of what he has done after his vision loss, is to help out others, just to see that same thing for themselves.
I recently have been very involved in my nonprofit organization.
Video of an iBug meeting in progress.
Back in 2011, gradually over time became a nonprofit, and we've been training the blind and visually impaired to use different types of technology. first started losing my vision back in my late 20s. Started going to the doctor at that time because my mother, who went blind from glaucoma, kind of ran in the family there, so I started having my vision checked. Sure enough, they found in my late 20s early signs of glaucoma.
Dr. Swathi Modi.
The level of his vision was around 2200 in his better eye and 2400 in his worse eye. Today, the vision in the better eye has reduced to 22,400.
Michael reading an eye chart.
We're nearly no light perception in the left eye. When I first met Michael, he was working at NASA. The level of vision that he had didn't seem to impact any type of job function.
When I was growing up, he was passionate about work, like NASA, you know, just space stuff. He's always been passionate about space stuff. He's always been the Rice graduate, the NASA engineer, and so, yeah, super smart.
Started out working on the Space Shuttle program, which was just getting kicked off in the early 80s. After that, moved over to the International Space Station program, and then finally retired a couple of years ago in the spring of 2017. I retired after 35 years working down at NASA.
After losing his vision, he remained, you know, passionate about like trying new things and always, you know, pushing the boundaries.
Achilles International is a global organization that helps disabled persons to participate in mainstream sports and really any activities that they would like to accomplish.
Bernie Tretta, guide.
I was running a marathon and there was a blind man that was being guided, and he was about the same pace as me, so we ended up running most of the marathon next to each other and talking to each other. And he and his guide were big believers in Achilles and told me all about it, but they were from New York City and they were like, I don't know if there's anything in Houston, like you should look it up. So I got online and looked it up and emailed them, and they said there's not a chapter here, but you can start one. And I was like, yeah, right. So I called New York and they said, well, we happen to have somebody else that's interested, so why don't you go ahead and start the chapter? And I did, and 7 years later, here we are.
Video of Bernie helping a woman into a hand cycle.
To help you get out there and do that. People don't realize they really can still do CrossFit and yoga and participating in sports. As long as you're creative, there generally aren't a lot of
Michael
limits.
doing yoga. Michael standing next to an axe-throwing bullseye.
I'm planning to do this hike to Machu Picchu. My hope is that others will be empowered to go out and explore, new physical activities, other experiences, to be able to see that there are no limits to what they can achieve.
Michael contacted me and said he wanted to make a documentary about this hike to Machu Picchu. I met with him and we sat down and he explained the whole trip to me, and I felt a little bit overwhelmed because this is a very challenging hike to do, especially in trying to film it.
Aerial views of Machu Picchu.
So after talking with Michael and praying about it, I felt confident that I could make it happen.
I just remember thinking to myself, how can you do that being visually impaired?
That's like a once-in-a-lifetime experience for him. At the same time, it's kind of like, how are you going to do that? It takes a lot of training.
Chuck French, Houston Adaptive Sports and Recreation.
Week in, week out, he's always exercising. It's not just a social visit for him. He's here for a reason. That's to get stronger, to get faster, to volunteer too.
I had met Bernie Tretta. I knew she was also connected with Achilles International.
Michael and I instantly became friends. He did a 5K with us and really started participating a lot.
I approached her and her husband, Zach. I knew they were avid hikers and also marathoners.
Probably 2 years ago now, he came up to me and said, I really want to do Machu Picchu. Would you be interested? And I said, yes! And he was like, well, you should probably ask Zach. And I was like, oh, okay. And he was like, Zach would be a great guide. And Michael likes to say that I'm a little wild and a little crazy, and Zach's not. And so he definitely wanted Zach there. I asked Zach and he just, without any hesitation, was like, yeah, let's do it. I don't know that you've ever said no. He always just supports me.
Zach Cater Syker, guide.
My take on it was, let's just get out there and get in as good of a shape as we can.
Janice Koppang, guide.
For Light, which is a program, an international program actually, that is for visually and mobilely impaired people. So there were sit skiers and then blind skiers.
Michael and Janice hiking on Red Rock Mountains.
Colorado, where she lived, and we would go hiking pretty much every day for a week. Each week that I went out there, I made actually about 4 trips out there. So that helped me tremendously.
He's got the mindset, I can do it, And if your mind says you can do something, you can probably figure out how to do it. And I think that's kind of where I am now too. I live right outside of Grand Mesa, which is the highest flat top mountain in the world. And so we can go up there cross-country skiing and hiking.
Words on the screen, training for the hike, followed by images of Michael lifting weights in the gym, hiking in the woods with Bernie and Zach, running up a hill, Michael in group exercise classes, Michael climbing upstairs, climbing a ladder, hiking in the woods, Robert climbing upstairs.
Going into this trip, we had a great plan in place. We were going to find a corporate sponsor to fund it, 4 personal guides to guide Michael, an extra porter to take care of the video gear, myself and another videographer to film the whole hike. Circumstances happened. The porter didn't get ordered. We didn't have an extra videographer. There was no corporate sponsor that had come in. A lot of things got in the way, and the original plan just got reduced and had to be minimized. The way this would work is Michael would have 3 sighted guides that would call out steps in front of him. Bernie and Zach, who were avid runners, marathoners, and then Janice, who was a little bit older, but she lived at altitude, so she hiked almost every single day.
2 weeks prior to our trip, been having knee pain. The doctors told me, you know, my meniscus was starting to tear during that time period. Finally, it was starting to get serious enough. I went ahead and had an MRI, and the doctor called me one day and said, your meniscus is torn all the way through. And by this time, it was only 2 days prior to the trip, and I sent an email note to the rest of the group.
I'll never forget it. I was sitting at my desk and this email comes through. The MRI showed the meniscus had torn through, and that's what's causing me the primary pain in my knee and the buckle at times. It will require surgery to repair it when I get back. In the meantime, I will just have to brace and wrap it as best I can and take a lot of drugs.
I couldn't believe it. I was like, I don't know what you want me to do with this email, Michael. What are you saying? Are you saying you don't want to go? And why are you only telling us 2 days before?
I'd actually thought about postponing it, but I knew at this point, if I postponed it, it may never happen.
He said, oh, I'm just telling you to let you know, and that we're going to be a little slower, but there's no changes to the plan. I was very skeptical.
Again, he has the mindset he's going to go do this. It's not going to stop him. We'll see what happens, but the money's been spent. We're on our way.
Words on the screen, June 9th, 2019. Scenes from the airport. A crowded airport lobby. Boarding the plane with passport in hand. A map showing a yellow pulsing bullseye at Houston, Texas. View out the window of a plane lifting off, then coming down to a yellow pulsing bullseye at Peru.
Knowing that we were going to be hiking over some passes that were near 14,000 feet, we needed to acclimate going into Cusco, which is right around 11,000 feet.
The day before the hike, we went on the city tour, and we stopped for lunch, and Michael orders a guinea pig.
We had seen people holding guinea pigs up on sticks. You could buy a guinea pig on a stick. So Michael knew he wanted to try that.
So I'm sitting across the table from Michael, and he's just chomping down on this guinea pig, and it just makes me nauseous. I was already feeling some altitude sickness. Now watching him eat this guinea pig was just putting me over the edge.
Everything was great until we saw Michael eat the guinea pig.
So of course I wanted to try that. They bring it out to you, and it's the full guinea pig.
And I swear, if he could have seen it, he wouldn't have eaten it.
Altitude, 11,152 feet.
In the altitude, just walking around the town, I could feel that impact.
Peruvian women walking up the street. The group touring Cusco. Juan Carlos, Can-Do Trail Guide.
That is the most important thing, that you need to take with you to pass the control of the...
We thought Can-Do had told Juan Carlos, our guide, that Michael was visually impaired, and they hadn't. And it turns out Juan Carlos learned about that at our debrief meeting the day before we started the hike.
After spending the day with Juan Carlos on the city tour, I was very confident that he would be able to get us to Machu Picchu. And when we met his team, there's 11 of them in total that are going to carry everything that we need to make it for the next 4 days.
These porters carry all our food, all our water. They do all the cooking. They do all the tent setup. They do all the
Can-do porters packing up gear.
They take off after we start out hiking, and they have our next campsite totally set up by the time we get there. They are just truly amazing people to watch work.
A wide-angle shot of Cusco, Peru, with white fluffy clouds rolling across the sky. Fade to black.
On June 12th at 10 a.m., we started the Inca Trail hike to Machu Picchu.
It was so much excitement and reality finally coming to fruition. We're about to start the Inca Trail. It was a beautiful, crisp morning, and it was, 2 years of work and a year of training to get there. It could not have been more beautiful. I was just astounded by the beauty.
Most of the trail is either kind of sandy, rocky soil, some kind of flat stones along the way, and I think the altitude was not that much of an altitude change.
Michael's doing great on day one, chugging along at a pretty good pace. He doesn't seem to be too bothered. We're not at very high altitude yet. He doesn't seem to be in pain. Day one was fantastic. I really had a lot of hope, like, wow, if this whole trail is like this is gonna be amazing.
We've been hiking about 3 hours so far this morning.
The team arriving at their lunch stop as the porters line up and clap.
He managed just fine that first day, I thought.
I remember we were all like shocked with how much food we got. I think we were all just kind of expecting like
trail mix,
or a sandwich or something like that. Come out with this like 5 family style dishes and all sorts of stuff.
And then even desserts.
Yeah.
It's just amazing what they could prepare and cook each day, just every day prepared these fantastic meals for us.
The team continues to hike in a single file using 2 trekking poles. Juan Carlos, in his bright orange can-do shirt, leads the way. Michael has a bright yellow blind sign on his blue backpack as the group climbs stone stairs. They pass a black pig and a tannish white kitten cuddled together, sleeping. They pass through a wooden gate that leads to a flat, grassy campsite. The porters line up and clap as the team arrives.
230 feet above sea level. From here, tomorrow we are going to take that direction. Far away up there is located the Dead Woman Pass, our first mountain pass. Okay?
The camera pans the campsite. Orange tents are spread out across the flat, grassy clearing. A chicken walks near one of the tents. The view turns upward to the mountain. Fade to black.
Day 2, probably one of the hardest days of my entire life.
Day 2 hike was going to be one of our toughest days, and it was going to be the steepest hike that we'd be making.
Day 2 would be about 7 miles. I think at least 6 of those miles is just straight up.
We were going from our campsite there up to 14,000 feet, would go over Dead Woman's Pass.
I was excited for day 2. I know it was the hardest day. I wanted to kind of see and experience that.
As we hiked up, I was feeling fairly strong. I knew just because of the visual impairment, we were going to be going slower than everyone else that were hiking, and sure enough, as we hiked along the way, people would be passing us.
On the way up that morning, I think there was probably 3 or 4 other hikers from other groups that we saw going back the other direction. So kind of
the group climbs very steep, rocky steps.
They basically say they send them back with either one of the porters or the assistant cook.
One of the problems with the trail is that there's no way off the trail. There's no train, there's no road, there's no escape route. They can't even get helicopters to every single part of the trail. And so if there's an emergency, you're kind of at the mercy of God, nature, and your trail guide.
On the way up, I started taking some medication, pain meds for my knee. I was starting to feel a little bit of pain from it there.
Maybe it was an hour and a half before lunch. Michael was really kind of slowing down, taking a few more breaks. At some point, Juan Carlos took his backpack from him and realized how heavy it was. Michael started hiking without his backpack, which I think was a fight to get away from him.
I know I was, physically fit. I felt relatively good about my fitness other than the knee pain that I was feeling.
Michael looked like he was just suffering from severe altitude sickness. No one knew that he was actually taking opioids for the pain.
One of the problems is that it slows your respiration, and you need to be breathing at a much faster rate when you're at altitude and there's much thinner air. Michael, unfortunately, was taking something that's decreasing his respiration, and he just started declining and really, getting lethargic and confused and even hallucinating. He was seeing buildings.
Michael was just pale. He looked white. And part of that was the sunscreen. He'd rubbed it all over his face. But part of that was also just the pain he was going through and the medicine he was taking.
Juan Carlos got really concerned, thinking that he was having oxygen deprivation or problems from the altitude. And so they sat him down.
Michael laying back in the grass holding an oxygen mask to his face.
Oxygen mask off after 3 minutes, and there was no change in Michael. Juan Carlos was still really concerned.
I guess he felt like I was, having issues breathing, and probably I guess I was, because I was breathing pretty heavily.
I think he was debating, what do we do? Do we keep moving forward? At what point do I say he can't go on?
Of course, the end goal, everybody wants to get to Machu Picchu. That was something to be looking forward to, but most hikers know that this day 2 hike, to get over Dead Woman's Pass, is probably the ultimate part of the trip.
It was either shortly before or shortly after he took oxygen. He actually fell over one time. I remember, Bernie and I were probably 10 feet behind him, and Juan Carlos was turned backwards on the trail facing us because we were asking him some question about either a rock or a plant or something like that. And all of a sudden he just turns around, sprints and dives and just kind of like knocks Michael. Michael was started to kind of fall over towards the edge of the cliff. He was able to get there, just in time to kind of help soften his fall.
Juan Carlos never missed the opportunity to take a good selfie, especially when one of his passengers was passed out behind him.
I can't imagine the pain that Michael was experiencing, but he never stopped. He just kept going.
He's still chugging along. It's slow, step, but he's slowly but surely making it up to the top.
It was very challenging, and it wasn't probably until we were about 100 feet from the top that I really started to get confident that Michael was going to make it.
Everybody that was on the trail, which was almost a constant procession of people, were always passing us, and Michael had his blind tag on his back, and they all kind of like, wow, how's he doing this?
I can remember Bernie and others saying that, hey, we reached the top, and I guess I wasn't really aware of it, didn't really click to me.
It makes me proud of Michael, definitely. It was a very, very hard hike. It was difficult, and he did it.
We got up there early enough that we could kind of cross our poles so that he could walk through it. Everybody was really excited that he had made it to that point.
For me, I had never hiked over about 11,500 feet. To reach that, probably one of my ultimate goals for the whole trip.
For him to have a torn meniscus, a herniated disc, high altitude, opioids, and blind, he climbed up 5,000 feet that day over a 14,000 foot pass. It was tough.
After making it over Dead Woman's Pass on the descent, it was again very steep, very big steps, very rocky. My knee pain at that point, just pounding on the knee, it started becoming just really excruciating.
Well, going down is more difficult for me too. It's harder on the knees.
Every single step he took going down was just a jolt on that knee, and he started swaying, and you can tell this wasn't going to end well.
Juan Carlos, recognizing that I was swaying, had connected a little rope to my backpack, and he was following me, holding that, making sure I didn't fall over as we were going down the hill.
I think at this point we all felt that it was going to get easier. As soon as we started down the trail, we realized that that wasn't going to be the case.
Juan Carlos, I guess, realized, we're not going to make it to the next campsite before it gets dark. He got a couple of the porters to come back, and they got a backpack, kind of made a makeshift little cradle and straps. Literally, they were carrying me down on this little cradle backpack. I mean, they're very experienced in those mountains. Can't believe they can keep my weight. over the shoulders.
Seeing the porters carry Michael down the mountain was incredible.
The rest of us really had trouble keeping up with how fast that they went.
It was after dark when we arrived at camp, but we all thought, you know what, the hardest part's over. It should just get easier from here.
And we still thought that all of the problems Michael was having was because of the altitude. So once we got back down to 11,000 feet where the camp was, Juan Carlos, he said, don't worry, Michael's gonna sleep it off. You just watch. In the morning, he's gonna be a new man. And he was. I was really excited about that. Like, okay, here, we made it past the hardest point and we're ready to go.
A silhouette of a tent and trees with a dark blue star-filled sky in the background fade to black.
On day 3, we started at 4 a.m. and it was supposed to be 10 to 11 hours. Normal people do it in about 8. We had 10 miles to cover, a little bit of up, but mostly down.
Each day we were basically getting up about
The team is hiking in the dark, wearing headlamps.
To ensure that, we would get to the next campsite before it got dark.
8 o'clock on the dot, Michael's alarms started going off. So we'd been hiking for 3 hours and we were maybe 20 minutes from the pass. And he's like, oh, it's time for my medicine. He sits down on a rock and he pulls out a Ziploc bag full of pills. And, we're jokingly making fun of him, like, what is all of that?
So it looked like Michael was taking a lot of pills. And so when Bernie asked him, he said it's for his blood pressure, for his back, and for his knee.
And we're like, wait, what did you just take? And he said, oh, I took a muscle relaxant for my back and a painkiller for my knee. I just grabbed the bag from him. I said, we're not gonna let you take any more. And he thought I was joking. And, we were kind of trying to be light about it, but I mean, it hit us, I think all of us at the same time, that, oh my God, that's what was wrong yesterday. That's why he was having such a struggle, was that he was on medication.
So after Michael took these pills, I was wondering how long would it take before this stuff kicked in. And then sure enough, 30 minutes later, you could definitely see a change in Michael.
Boom, like clockwork. He instantly started stumbling and becoming disoriented again and confused. And then all of us realized at the same time, like, oh my gosh. This is another day.
Michael,
like
walking with his
yesterday.
arms
So
draped
after
over
Michael
the
started
porter's
getting lethargic
shoulders.
again, our pace just slowed down, and Juan Carlos knew that we weren't going to make it, so the porters jumped in and had to carry him again.
I think to call it anything other than like a rescue mission at this point, it's really not calling it what it is. The porters are carrying most of his weight down that hill. And you can see how steep it drops off on the left side there and how narrow that trail is. And it's actually even narrower at other points.
Agarra la espalda, papá. Okay, we are going to relax you. Bien. Relax.
When you have 3 human beings trying to walk down that path, it's virtually impossible. So there were moments where they had to turn sideways and shimmy as a unit of 3 down the path because it was so narrow.
There was a point where, to give the porters a break, Zach stepped in and did some of the assisting.
So I am taking Zach's backpack, which has the oxygen tank, among other things in it, because Zach is about to start carrying Michael as well. We couldn't have all 4 porters with us because they needed to run ahead to camp and drop everything off and then come back, and somebody needed to be there to guide Michael. So I'm now carrying 40 pounds of stuff on my back, but Zach has the much shorter end of the stick, as he now has to carry a human.
I definitely was not expecting I was going to have to do this. You're almost stepping on top of your feet, or Michael's stepping on top of your feet, just because how uneven those stairs are and how small they are. You're trying to fit 3 people wide, so again, that's 6 feet on one step at a time, and kind of taking the steps down there, you kind of get impacted with his weight on kind of every step, especially kind of the big steps. It's kind of, you take a step down and you got 100 pounds on your back. I don't know why I thought this, but I thought Juan Carlos was walking behind us with the tether, so I kind of had this false sense of confidence that if I was going to fall forward, Carlos was going to be able to pull us back. That really wasn't the case. It really got extremely real to me at that point.
The actual hiking time was roughly around 13 hours that day, our longest day, and like I said, it was our hardest day actually hiking. For me,
it's almost dark when the team arrives at camp.
Even getting into camp,
the porters line up and clap at their arrival.
Michael was just exhausted when we got to camp. And so we went to the dinner tent, and after a while he had to use the restroom. And I remember taking Michael down to use the restroom, and it was a little bit of a hike just to get to the restroom. Our camp was up high on a ledge, and you had to walk down and around. So I got him into the restroom and came back, and moments later we heard some distress.
All of a sudden we hear yelling and the porter's rushing over in time to see Michael fall out of the tent, and he reaches up and pulls the tent down over him as it collapses. And Juan Carlos was up in a flash and down to Michael to save the day.
The initial kind of a shock, but then the laughter quickly broke out afterwards. Had fun, joked about that.
It was quite a spectacle that Michael fell off the toilet and broke the toilet tent.
Juan Carlos had done this hike over 800 times, and out of the 800 times he has had 5 mountain rescues, Michael being one of those, but never in all those hikes has anyone destroyed his restroom.
Time-lapse photo of the sun setting, then mountains in a silhouette with the dark starry sky above fade to black.
Day 4 we get up even earlier, 3:30 I think it was, and the goal is to get through the checkpoint to make it to the sun gate. The sun gate is where you actually see your first look at.
The team begins hiking in the dark.
He's doing great this day. Again, he's moving a little faster. He hasn't taken any medication. The trail isn't as treacherous, and well, it's treacherous, but it's not as difficult. So he's moving along much slower than the average hiker, but we're still moving.
Day 4 was better, but still a struggle.
They climb steep steps using their hands and feet, almost like climbing a ladder.
Steps or the monkey steps. They're very steep and very narrow, and you don't get to rest.
Made it up the gringo steps, monkey steps.
Yeah, now we gotta go down.
Michael drinks water through his backpack tube.
For most people, it's an hour to the sun gate and then an hour down to Machu Picchu, so it'd be 2 hours, and it took us 6 hours that day.
Our group going slower than all the other groups. We were the last ones to get there. I would pass a few people and everybody smelled real good. You know, us having hiked for the last 3 days, probably not smelling best, but then I realized, and others had said too, that, you know, most of the people there at that point were people that had come in on buses and on the train to get to the sun gate.
Really, you know, great climactic moment of like, oh my God, we reached the sun gate. There's Machu Picchu.
You see that Machu Picchu is actually down in a valley, so we were going to have to go down a whole lot to get to this big site that we were going to. Machu Picchu was rediscovered in 1911 by a person by the name of Bingham III. I think it's H. Bingham III. He'd been out in Peru, perusing around. Over time, the forest had covered all of the Inca ruins. And so, you know, he just found them by accident, actually. And now it's considered one of the 7 wonders of the world. Oh my goodness.
After 26 miles, finally. I am so happy that I was your tour guide. I appreciate and we did together the Inca Trail. Yeah. Thank you so much. It was a great pleasure for me, seriously, to be guiding you here on the Inca Trail. Thank you so much.
It is pretty cool.
Hola, Josecito del Perú, ¿qué de tu vida, brother?
Michael.
It was just a feeling of exhilaration, for me a feeling of relief to have gotten this far after, you know, the year of training that I did. Proud to be there, excited to be there. It was just a real awesome thing to experience.
Michael stands in front of Machu Picchu Mountain in his yellow Achilles International t-shirt, trekking pole still in hand, as he raises his arms in victory over his head.
Michael just gets out there and does it. He doesn't really let anything stop him. Everybody has limitations, whether you have a disability or not. I mean, I can't run a 2-hour marathon no matter how hard I'm going to try, and I'll never be able to climb Everest. But that doesn't mean I can't try.
You know, you can't help but go, wow, you know, he did this. You can't help but be inspired and
views of the team walking around Machu Picchu.
Commitment and courage to go ahead and push through.
I think about the problems that he had, but overall it was just a good trip. And he's already talking about doing something else that we're not sure he should do either, okay?
With an injury like this and the challenge it was going to be, this would have been an easy thing to say, look, I can't do this, or to put it off. That I think really is important for people to understand that you can accomplish things even in the midst of adversity.
I knew he wasn't going to let any small injuries, you know, deter him from finishing his goal that he had set out. He doesn't like being told, no, you can't do that, and I get that.
This trip helped all of us get out of our comfort zones and experience something that we wouldn't have been able to experience without Michael, without his lead.
Word is getting out little by little about the trip. And
Newspaper article titled "Climbing High" about Michael's trip unfolds on the screen.
Will help others continue to take on new challenges, to be able to do things that they thought they might not ever be able to do, to basically live the life you want, that regardless of your abilities, that pretty much all things are possible. Basically, you can accomplish anything you want to do, just have to take it one step at a time.
A picture of Michael and his guide standing together in front of Machu Picchu. Michael lets out a victorious yell. Words on the screen. After the trip, Robert continued training with his friends and plans to return to Peru in 2022 with his wife. Bernie and Zach are now living in Singapore due to Zach's company transferring him there. They are enjoying learning the culture, meeting new friends, and traveling to nearby areas in Malaysia and Thailand. Janice is back home in Colorado enjoying hiking the Western Rockies, cross-country skiing, biking, fishing, and boating. Michael continues his leadership of iBug Today. The nonprofit has been recognized by the National Federation of the Blind as a positive force in the lives of blind people and whose work advances the goal of helping transform their dreams into reality. Michael is the oldest blind person, age 64, to hike the Classic Inca Trail to Machu Picchu. After the hike, Michael had surgery. Then he jumped out of a plane. Michael with his instructor in tandem free fall. Close-up of 2 hands clapping and giving 2 thumbs up, surrounded by the clouds. Then, with parachute open, Michael and his instructor coast toward the ground and make a perfect landing. Words on a black background. Cast in order of appearance. Robert, videographer, Robert Harrington. Michael, blind hiker, Michael McCulloch. Bernie, guide, Bernie Tretta. Zach, guide, Zach Cater-Syker. Janice, guide, Janice Kapang. Juan Carlos, trail guide, Juan Carlos Corimania. Also appearing, Denise Anderson, sister, Lauren McCulloch Murph, daughter, Sandia Rao, friend, Pastor Michael Dunn, First Christian Houston, Swathi Modi, OD, University Eye Institute, Chuck French, Houston Adaptive Sports and Recreation, Porters and Cooks, Can Do Adventures, Ernesto, Llama, Diego, Pig, Eva, Cat. No animals were harmed or mistreated during the production of this film, just one human. Audio description by Sabrina Martinez, Sight into Sound Recording Services.